Hello and welcome to lesson 4 in this series of lessons on UK challenges. Today we're going to be looking at the UK's climate change challenge. So although climate change is a global challenge, we're going to be focusing on the effects of climate change on the UK specifically. So we're going to look at global climate effect on the UK's climate, we're going to look at climate change impacts in the UK, and we're going to be looking at responses to climate change. And that's going to drift away from just the UK and look at global responses as well. So these are some notes you need for your book. So use the subheading of global climate change in the UK. Firstly, we're just going to establish that the UK's current climate is what we'd call temperate. Now you'll know this from the weather hazards and climate change topic, and the UK's position globally means it's got a temperate climate, it's seasonal. So as the world's climate changes, we're actually expecting that temperate nature to shift slightly, to adjust. So predicting how, though, it's going to adjust is the main difficult thing. And you can see on the left there is a computer model, or 3 computer model projections, one of which they're all based on the 1990 levels of emissions, CO2 emissions. And one of them shows what's going to happen to the concentration of CO2 in the atmosphere, which is directly linked to temperature. What happens if we halve the 1990 emissions, if we keep the 1990 emissions as they were in 1990, or if we keep increasing the emissions as we have been, and as population increases, sort of not exponentially, but up to its peak point in sort of the late 2000s. So those 3 scenarios, so to speak, are all negative in the sense that CO2 is going up in all of them. So even if we halved the emissions we were emitting in 1990, it's still not good enough to stop global warming and therefore climate change as a result. And that's the other thing, it's global warming which triggers climate change. Climate change does not trigger global warming. One of them is linked to the other. So global warming is happening, climate change is happening because of global warming. Okay, so you can see, because of these different computer models and the fact that we change our behaviour all the while in between them, there's no exact end point. But what we can sort of fairly accurately agree on is that emissions are going to go up, and therefore temperatures are likely to go up too. So what we try and use to get this information is population increase predictions. We know that the population is going to increase to about maybe 10 billion globally at some stage, and with those people we know that they're likely to utilise things like food and energy and all these things and all these activities which emit greenhouse gases, not just CO2 but other things like nitrous oxide or methane. So as greenhouse gas emissions increase, so predictions will show that they go up. And because alongside the population going up, the world is getting wealthier and personal wealth is increasing too. And that personal wealth means that we are going to increase the potential use of energy, for example, energy utilising appliances and products, buying products just uses energy as well. And that's something we addressed in the resources and energy resource management topic. So again, within this first slide we've got information about weather and climate, and we've also got information about the energy and resource management sections. So again, that synoptic link going on between these topics within this section of challenges. Now obviously there's a lot of predicting greenhouse gas emissions, predicting wealth, predicting population, predicting tech development, because obviously some people predict that we're all going to be fine because we're going to invent something which reduces it all. And that could be true, but all of them are predictions, none of them are exacting. And because it's predictions, it means the variables don't allow us to kind of produce a definite, like, yeah, this is going to happen on this date and then. And it also doesn't include things like volcanic eruptions, which also emit greenhouse gas emissions. So it's hugely unreliable. All of our predictions around climate change are unreliable. The general consensus, however, is that climate is changing because the evidence is there. So all of this information down, please, because this is really important just to give you context about climate change. I'm not trying to say that climate change is definitely happening. I'm not trying to say it's not definitely happening. What I am trying to do is show you that no one really knows. All we can do is trying to use the information that's available to us to make predictions, so hopefully we don't become extinct. Okay, when you're ready, if you've got the notes, you can unpause the screen. So we're going to add a bit more information onto this, but now we're going to be looking at the impacts of climate change on the United Kingdom specifically. So I've got a few resources for you. One of them, I've got the cursor over the map. You can see there's a YouTube link. You can either type that in, or you can go onto the Office 365, the Joglogs folder, and find the video in the fourth challenge, the climate change challenge section. But what I'd like you to do, there's an A3 page on there, okay, with a UK map on it, a blank UK map on it. I'd like you to annotate that blank UK map with the extreme temperature predictions that we'd find from this map, okay? So around the eastern region, the east of England, they reckon by 2080, okay, the temperature predictions, the high temperature prediction could be about, or would be about 38.3 degrees Celsius, okay? 38.3 as the high. Currently, the high record is around 29.3. Okay, so that's nearly 10 degrees higher. You might think that's great. Okay, some of you might be like, "Oh, amazing! We're going to have some good summers at last." But the reality is, that's bad news. It's bad news for lots of things: water resources, species, wildlife. All of us will struggle in that heat. London is predicted, because it's an urban heat island and therefore absorbs all the heat from the concrete jungle that it is. The high currently in London is 30.7 degrees, but it'll peak at around like maybe 40 degrees in London by 2080. Again, that's a projection. It's not exact, a projection, but annotate your map with some of these details, some of these stats, these projections, please, because that's one way the UK will be affected by temperature. Other ways, though, what I'd like you to do, and it won't necessarily go alongside the map, but I would like you to copy basically the stats file here. Okay, I want extra information from here. So UK average temperatures have risen by a degree in the last 100 years. That is factual. That has happened. Okay, and then look at these other extremities. Okay, and everything else going on here. Alongside this, there are other knock-on effects. So the UK will be drier in summer. There'll be drought and there'll be heat waves, and that puts pressure on the NHS. So there's knock-on effects established in the stats file as well as specific figures. Okay, annual flood damage will rise from about 2 billion to 12 billion because of more extreme rainfall events as well. So loads and loads and loads of information I'd like you to get from this map, from this stats file, and from this video link, please. Once you've done that, then you're ready to move on with the next part of the lesson. So pause the screen. That's a good half an hour task there. Get that done. When you're ready, unpause the screen and we'll crack on with the rest of the session. Okay, hopefully you identified, maybe, probably not, but some benefits of UK's changing climates. If you haven't, just do a quick bit of research, make sure it's a reputable source, but look out for benefits of changing climates in the UK to add to your mind map as well, please. Okay, so responses to climate change. Now this is the thing, we can do something about it. This is my activist moment here. And we can do things on a local scale, a national scale, and a global scale, or an international scale. And now you need to know what we are doing to try and help tackle climate change in all three scales. So from a local level to a national level to a global level, an international level. Now all of them have their strengths and weaknesses. There are advantages to some and disadvantages to the same ones as well, but they're all ways to try and tackle climate change. They're ways to try and reduce the impacts that we're likely to see that you've already got information on just here. So in 365, okay, in the Joglogs folder, there is this table, which I've even started for you, okay? So I've gone local, national and international. I've given you a number of strategies. You don't have to come up with the strategies, all right? In terms of local strategies, walk or cycle instead of using cars. Buy local, reduce, reuse, recycle, all things that you probably have heard of. Then just a couple of strengths of those strategies and a couple of weaknesses. So the strengths are they're small scale, but they are achievable. They also benefit households long term because it saves money. Okay, if you reduce, reuse, recycle, you don't just save the planet, you save a bit of cash. But weaknesses, not everybody can cycle or walk to school or to work because they can't, they're too unhealthy or they can't afford the bike or whatever. The cycle network might not be very good, so it might not be very safe. Governments have to pay for a cycle network to build it, and that costs lots of money. So each of them, I'd like you to identify strengths and weaknesses. If you're not sure what any of them means or any of them are, look it up as well, please. So the information, again, I've started most of it for you. I'd like you to look up things like global agreements, like the Paris Agreement, the Kyoto Protocol, things like that, which are all international strategies to tackle climate change and agreements. Don't go into all the depth of it. There's pages and pages on Kyoto that you probably won't want to go into. But just summarise, very straightforward, strengths of it, a couple of bullet points will be fine, and weaknesses of those strategies, please. Okay, so that's what we're after. All right, so complete the table, try and be concise and use your own knowledge, but if you can get a stat in there, that would be even better. All right, pause the screen while you do that, please, and that really will summarise the end of the lesson. So once you're ready to unpause the screen, I'll just finish the session off, and then we'll go. Okay, it should take you about 20 minutes to do that properly. Okay, so we are at the end of that session. Now that is the 4th challenge in the UK challenges section, but there is one video to go in this series of videos. Now the reason I've done an extra video is if you're in school or doing the lessons, then there is an assessment that it goes alongside the actual test assessment that we would normally do. Now it makes sense that I've been talking about it all this time, this 16-mark question. It makes sense to give you practice of doing the 16-mark question. So the next session for this particular series of videos is all going to be on a practice 16-mark question. Now things that can really help you do this and do this well are if you go onto the GCSE revision playlist of this YouTube channel, and then go into the 16-mark question, or the discuss question I think it's called. So look out for the discuss question and then watch that video. Preparation for the next session and doing well in the assessment will be absolutely far better if you watch that video. Okay, so I can urge you to go onto one of my other videos. I'm not going to say like and subscribe and all that, so I don't mind, I'm not bothered about that. This is to make you better at answering those tricky questions. So do that before the next session, please, and then you'll be really prepared for completing that 16-mark bit of practice, and you can actually get a chance to practice what you've picked up from the revision PowerPoint, the video, the discuss question. Okay, thank you very much for listening. I'll see you next time, ready for an assessment.